Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen Benelli. This is the Reiki Lifestyle Podcast here with my daughter, Robin.
Hi,
Hi,
everybody.
Robin.
Hello.
And we are really excited with our special guest today, Michelle Shinagawa. So, hello, Michelle.
Hi, everyone.
And I do want to share some of the information about Michelle. I was really excited to meet her in Japan this past, must have been November, and at Yakutin Inamoto's Reiki share in Kyoto, Japan. So I'm going to let her share her story, but I do want to tell you all a little bit about her. We will, of course, put her contact information in our show notes. I'll share those in a minute. Um, but one of the things with Japan, with Michelle, is that she has really developed some beautiful tours of Japan as a Japanese person herself, living in the US for the last 30 years. She is a wonderful guide, understanding the various cultures and the bridge between Japanese and Western worlds. And so she's going to share about that today too. But she also has other modalities and expertise. And Michelle, I am not sure if it's called KonMari
Yeah.
Space and Life Organizer.
Yes,
Okay,
that's
good. I can't wait to hear about that. So to hear it, I need that. I think
right.
if it's what I think it is, I'm excited about it. NeuroMovement Practitioner, Chakra Therapist, Aromatherapist, Spiritual Counselor, and Tony Robbins trainer. I'm also really interested in that too, and a relationship coach. So she is here today to share her wisdom on Japanese culture and its deep relevance to Reiki practitioners. So you can find her. Her website is purplefishhealing.com. I do want to hear about that. And organize.purplefishhealing.com. Instagram is purplefishhealing. And then also her YouTube channel is Michelle Shinagawa. So did I leave anything out about your contact information?
That is it. Thank you.
Well, welcome. We're so glad to have you here. It was so fun to meet you in Japan, and it just feels like such a gift when we're there and to see each other. So anyway, why don't you go ahead and start with your story and what what brought you to today? And you can start anywhere it starts.
Sure. Thank you. And yes, it was such an honor to meet you that someone that I have been following for years just showed up in front of me in Kyoto. So that was such a perfect moment to connect with you. So I guess I'll start chronological order. So I grew up in Japan. I was born in this beautiful countryside of Japan by the mountain. And I was this really shy, awkward, anxious girl. I never even raised my hand. Like, Japan tends to have more shy people, and I think I was the shyest of the shy people. So, and then when I was 17, I was brought to US because my dad was working for NIH as a scientist. So it's very interesting how I am. My mom is a pharmacist and my dad is a scientist, and I'm in this woo world. And I'm also, my other background is in photography, so I have nothing to do with science. However, and maybe this is something we can go a little bit deeper later, but I taught my dad Reiki, I think like when I started teaching, so probably like about 17 years ago. And he claims that he does self-care Reiki every day for 4 hours. He's retired, right? He started 1 hour and then he moved on to 2 hours. And he's like, oh yeah, now I do it 4 hours. I don't know if he doesn't have a clock at home, but but he just loved Reiki. And the fact that we were just talking beforehand, how people in Japan are not as open to Reiki as people in here in the States. So I just love the fact that my dad really loved Reiki and he's taking care of himself. So so that's me, I guess, like a little bit about me, and then maybe I can talk about how I started Reiki.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Absolutely. And you live in New York. What part
Yes.
of New York?
I live in Queens. It's Jackson Heights is the town that I live in. It's the melting pot of melting pot. So apparently this is the most diverse city in New York. So I'm assuming that's like the most diverse in US and maybe in the world.
I'm
So
thinking probably in the world.
yeah, so if you guys are ever in New York, let me know. I can share all the amazing food in this neighborhood.
Oh, I would love it.
So yeah, so that's what I love that about New York too, being in a diverse area where Reiki is a lot more accepted, right? So I started Reiki in 2001 when my dog. So I know you teach animal Reiki, and I was a crazy dog mother, and my dog was limping when he was 6 years old, and he had arthritis. And back then, first of all, I never heard of Reiki. And I'm sorry, but I thought it was one of those things that, like, another thing that Americans say, it's from Japan, but it's not, right? Like, I'll see it at the metaphysical bookstore, says Reiki from Japan or whatever. It's like, but anyway, one of my friends said, "Hey, I'm taking Reiki class this weekend, and it's supposed to be good for humans' arthritis. Maybe it'll help your dog." I'm like, sign me up, right? I had no idea what it is, but if it will help my dog. And what was amazing, and this is like back in 2001, so it still wasn't that popular. So that's probably why I really haven't heard about it. But my dog stopped limping after like a couple of sessions, maybe a few. And he did not limp for 6 years after that. So he didn't get his arthritis back until he was 12 years old. So that's how I got started with Reiki. And I'm like, oh, okay, he stopped limping. I'm done. Right. And I was like, okay, my mission accomplished. And then a couple of years later, I was my boyfriend at the time had a mother who was going through chemotherapy. And she lived in this like boony of New Jersey where she never even had sushi in her life. So but she was very open and she really took care of me like her daughter. So when she wasn't feeling well with her chemotherapy, and I'm like, well, I think I learned this thing called Reiki, right? Like maybe I could do something. But once again, I was very shy and awkward, and I'm like, I don't know how to talk about this thing. So I kind of went like, so I do this thing called Reiki. Maybe that can help you. Like I couldn't even look at her, right? Like I'm like looking away, and I'm so glad she said yes to it, because if someone told me that way, that awkward way, I'll be like, oh. But she's like, yes, I would like to try that, and she loved it. So she said that it didn't matter which part of chemotherapy she was in. There's different cycle of the chemotherapy, right? And because I didn't live so close, so anytime I go, I'll give her a session. And she said it didn't matter what part of the cycle she was in of the chemotherapy, that she felt good a week after that. So I was like, oh, wow, that's so amazing. And I really wanted to help her. So I decided to go to Reiki 2, which is where you learn the long distance Reiki, for those of you who's not in the Reiki world or hasn't taken the Reiki 2, so that I don't have to go see her, right? Like I can send her Reiki anytime. And then after that, I realized that the rest was history. I'm like, oh, wow, this is so amazing. I love Reiki too. And I noticed that it's actually helping me. This like shy, anxious little girl is like started to come out and started to feel a little bit better, like, start to think a little bit positive. So I signed up for Reiki Master. And at the time with my particular teacher, I studied with Margaret Ann Case, who was teaching at the New York Open Center. And it was 9-month program. So it was a very intense and amazing journey. And at the end of the 9 month, I was like, I want to learn more. And the only thing that was left to do was Reiki Master Teacher training. And I'm like, wait, I don't even speak perfect English, and like there's no way I'm gonna be in front of people. And but I wanted to learn more, so I went on to study with her because she was teaching at the New York Open Center, which I'm not sure if you ever heard of it, but it's one of the largest holistic school in New York. No longer around, but so we used to have like 20 to 30 students. And yeah, so I had to be, like once I started teaching with her, I had to be in front of those people and actually speak up, and just to say like, you have 10 minutes left, like my voice would flip, right? Like I couldn't even just like say things like that. And then after that, after I graduated from teacher training, then she would hire me. There's other people who was teaching with her too, so not all the time, but she would hire me to teach with her until she passed. And then after she passed, my friend who I was studying with became the Reiki program director. So we were teaching once a month. So I was given a really fortunate opportunity to be able to teach Reiki for so many people, because we were teaching almost once a month, and we'll have maybe 10 to 30 people. So that was kind of like, boon, right? Boot camp. Like I had to learn to hold my space and not focus on myself, and then also, heal all the wounds from the past. So and what's been amazing is that now I'm a public speaker. Not, and Zoom is amazing because I can speak much more too, but I could speak in front of 100 of people now. I still do get nervous, but I would have never thought of that. And because of Reiki, I'm able to do that. And I think maybe one other thing that I would throw it in there is during pandemic, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called Sjogren's syndrome. And thankfully, so it's been a couple of years, maybe 3 years, 4 years. And my dad is a scientist, my mom is a pharmacist, so I'm not completely against the Western medicine or like all medications. However, I'm a Reiki person, so I want to take care of my body as much as I can without it. And luckily, I have been healing my body naturally. So for there was a time when I had no energy. But now, especially like when I was in Japan, my friends are calling me energy monster because I'm up really early in the morning because I don't want to miss anything, and I'm jumping around and seeing all these people and all these places, and I go to bed really late and I still have tons of energy. So thanks to Reiki and all the alternative healing, that I am able to nurse my health back without medication. And so it just amazing journey for me. And then also I'm very thankful because I do have a lot of students who come to me, or clients who come to me with an autoimmune condition. And I'm sure you both have that kind of experience where first day of the class, they couldn't they couldn't even come to the class without getting a ride from their boyfriend or something. But then like they're calling, going like, hey, I feel good, I'm just going to take public transportation. And like that kind of situation, I was very compassionate, and I was able to share as much as I can of my knowledge, but I wasn't in their shoes. And now I feel like I'm in their shoes and I can share more with my experience. So that's maybe that's a little bit about me and Reiki. So I've been teaching Reiki since 2007. So I'm very lucky to be. Oh, and then it's, I would say it may not be coincidence that I know that you teach animal Reiki, and that just this week my local veterinary clinic asked me to teach Reiki to their staff. So this Saturday and next Saturday, I'll be teaching Reiki just for them. And yesterday I just went to visit and drop off my manual, and we had lovely chat about my dog and how I started Reiki and all that stuff with them. So
Well, that is exciting. Yes. Well, and it's one of the topics we actually teach in the Animal Reiki course is compassion fatigue, by staff members
Mm.
in both veterinary clinics, sanctuaries, animal rescue, humane societies, things like that. And
Oh.
so it's one of the things that we talk about is how the caregivers really need Reiki too. And often how the animals end up orchestrating their person to end up with Reiki, just like your little dog.
Yes. I think that's what.
I had a similar story. I don't want to go into it too long, but I ended up with Reiki because of my horse. And the same thing that he went lame at 5 years old. And I tried everything. We did all of the medical. I had been in shamanic training for 3 years. And one day I finally asked him what happened. And he showed me putting my hands on him and said, I went lame to deliver you to your power to heal.
Oh.
And so we see that so commonly now, how often, whether the animals are aware of that role or whether it seems to us that they're aware of that role,
Mhm.
they end up orchestrating their person. And I had the same experience of like, well, no, it didn't occur to me that I would be doing this, but it's so compelling. It just ended up more and more compelling and the same time frame as you. So yeah, I received at
Really?
the end of 2000 and then all the way through 2001. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Oh, that's so wonderful to hear. Yeah, I'm very grateful for my dog for bringing me to Reiki.
Can you just share real quickly, what is Sjogren's?
It's an autoimmune condition, and the biggest, so like a general autoimmune condition thing like brain fog and arthritis and all that stuff. But the what I first was told is like, oh, you're gonna have dry eye and dry mouth. And I'm like, oh, what's the big deal? Right. And then of course I have an amazing doctor who is actually willing to work with me on the holistic side. But first thing she said is, so you want to be on medication? And I'm like, let me try something else first. And and first thinking like, dry eye, dry mouth. What's the big deal? Well, I didn't realize during pandemic, I did not want to go open up my mouth at the dentist. So I didn't go for maybe like a year and a half or two. And then I had to get root canal and crown and like few other things. And it ended up costing me a whole lot of money. And I was like, I don't know what happened. I was brushing my teeth and they said like, oh yeah, the dry mouth will give you that. So yes. I did not know, so I'm always moist in my mouth.
Oh, that is so interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And luckily, all the things that I do with Reiki and all the nutrition from the natural source like aloe give me more moist in my body. So I haven't been needing to even use eye drop, but there are people who, when your eyes are so dry, it hurts. So I'm luckily being able to keep it at bay, but if you have it and when it's progressed, there are a lot of consequences that I at first didn't realize. And I did have a lot of brain fog. So I don't want to toot my own horn, but I consider myself to be like, the smartest one in the group or like smarter one in the group or whatever. And I was working for advertising agency as a graphic designer, and there's a lot of things that's involved in it. And I'm normally like on top of it. And during pandemic, I was assigned to a new group and I was working from home. And things that someone told me 10 minutes ago, I'm asking that question again. And I'm like, wait. And then my problem solving skill just went down completely. And I was just like kicking myself. I'm like, what happened? I became so dumb. And then I realized that it was the autoimmune condition with brain fog, and all that is actually common for not just Sjogren but autoimmune condition. So I have a lot more compassion for people who's going through that and having a brain fog, because it was not something that I was able to control.
Yeah, I had a similar story with that too. Right around that same time, I got a virus in my eye that did the same thing I had, and it lasted about a year
Oh.
where I was in absolute chronic fatigue. Like taking a shower was all I could do for the day.
Mm.
And it was contagious. So I also was quarantined. So nobody could wanted to or could be around me. And the same thing where Reiki supported me through finding the solutions and the resources that then actually brought about my wellness. But I know exactly what you mean. And I remember at the time thinking, well, look at the world just goes on, life goes on. And yeah, it doesn't matter that I've been out for a year. I mean, it did matter, but I was surprised being a pretty high energy person
Mm.
typically. So you say now then your energy is back because it's hard to imagine you as being very shy or low energy.
Yes, and I'm still a little shy, but yeah, my energy is back. I don't think it's back to what it was before, because like I mentioned, I am a Tony Robbins trainer, and his event goes on from very early in the morning till very early in the morning, right? Like it could go on for like 18, 19, 20 hours, and I used to do that in person for a few days in a row, and now I just support them through Zoom, and I do less hours. So I'm not sure if I can, ever do those crazy hours. However, my Reiki tour started like about 6 a.m. and it went at like 9 p.m. and I still had to work through like all the logistics, and I was completely fine. So I think I'm back to like what normal person's energy level. I just don't have that crazy energy like I used to have.
The other question I have, I'm curious about your business name, um, uh, Bluefish Healing.
No,
How did
purple.
that,
Isn't
I
it
mean,
purple
purple
fish?
fish. Yeah, thank you. Purple fish healing. How did that come about? And what is the meaning behind that?
Yes, actually, cobalt blue is also my other favorite color. So maybe you just psychically know
Picked
that.
up on it.
Yeah. So purple is my favorite color, and so that's one of the reason. And then also I'm Pisces, so purple
Me
fish.
too.
Oh, we have so much in
I
common.
know, I know.
When is your birthday?
March 16th.
Oh my God. Oh, wow. So I'm March 12th and March 16th is my best friend's birthday.
Wow.
Oh, someone like that I love the most in life, like someone who I get along the most in this lifetime. So very interesting. So many in common.
Very. So, okay, so that's where the purple fish healing comes from.
Yes, actually, so my previous business was as a designer. I needed to come up with a business name, and I was talking to my friend, and it's like, oh, I don't know about the business name. I don't know what to make it. And she said, well, you like purple and you're Pisces. How about purple fish design? And I'm like, okay, that sounds good. And when I needed to register my business name as a healer, I'm like, well, I think purple fish sounds good still. So I'll make it purple fish healing. And that's how it came about.
I love it. Well,
Mhm.
it's really memorable too.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's good. Well, it's one of the things that we talk about, in some of our classes with business things, like make your business name memorable. And that is easy to spell, memorable. Yeah, I really like it. And it elicits that curiosity. Like,
Oh.
hmm, I wonder why she named it that. So,
Oh, good to know. Thank you.
Michelle, I'm curious about the part of your story where you like started with this process with Japan, with Reiki in Japan and your tours and like, where did that bridge? I mean, I know you said you're from there, but But where did that start with your Reiki story as well?
So, one of the things that's very interesting is thanks to my dog that brought me to Reiki. I'm originally from Japan and I came here when I was 17. And then after a while, I kind of just put that on the side and I became more New Yorker than Japanese. A lot of my Japanese friends would go back to Japan like once a year because their family's home, or their root is still in Japan. My family is here. So I'll go to Japan maybe every 6 years. I didn't even speak that much Japanese anymore after a while. So I kind of just was like, oh, I'm formally Japanese person. And then I studied Reiki and I'm like, oh, it's from Japan. So I did visit all the major site in 2007. And then I think back again in 2009, and I really loved Mount Krama when I visited. I think I think Colleen can share that feeling. And then I went on to a tour in 2019, and then I saw some things that was a little bit I felt like maybe could need a bridge. So there is, I think most of you know, if you're a Reiki geek, that there is a temple in a cemetery in Tokyo where Master Usui is buried. And so we went to visit there. And when we came out, in front of the gate, there were two non-Japanese people who were squatting down and drinking water. And which is like, if it was anywhere else, right? In New York, I squat down on the floor, drink water like this, no problem. And I'm very like a New Yorker, so I didn't know I still had that feeling in my body. But like I cringed when I saw it. And that was right after I was on someone's tour, and someone who organized it asked if we could come into the temple and visit the gravestone. And the office didn't say no. So we went in and we got kicked out. And I asked like, oh, I thought you got permission. And he said, oh, no, they didn't say anything. So I thought it was okay. And I'm like, oh, Japanese culture, they don't say no. So I saw quite a few things that are like that. Like, I'm Japanese, so I'll talk to a cab driver when I'm by myself, and they're talking about like, oh, all these like people who's visiting from another country, they're doing this and this and this, and they don't know I'm from another culture, right? So they're telling me all this problem. I'm like, oh, all these people are coming to pay respect, right? It's not because they don't care. They're actually visiting Japan because they want to be connected to the root of Reiki. And I don't think any foreigner would come visit the particular local, cemetery unless they know about Master Usui. So I'm pretty sure they're Reiki people. And they're visiting out of respect. But because of the cultural gap, that the temple is really like shooing people off, because as a Japanese person, I can see, so I think maybe I'll talk a little bit more about the difference between the American culture and Japanese culture, or Western culture and Japanese culture. But Japanese culture is all about harmony and respect and how you look in front of other people. So having people squatting down in front of your gate is really bad look. The neighbor will be like, what's wrong with them? Why do you have all these visitors like that? And so that, but I know those people who are there, they didn't mean to cause that kind of problem. They're just there because they really wanted to be connected to the root of Japan. So at the time, I thought that I really wanted to create educational program, because I can see from Western point of view, right? And then also because I still have that in me, that I can share what it is and that I get it, right? It's not like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Like, I totally get it. and this is how it's going to appear from Japanese perspective. And there's many things that maybe I can go into a little bit later. There's many things that I don't get, right? Like, so I think, Colleen, you've been in Japan, so you're probably told like you can't eat and walk at the same time, and like you can't just keep snacking, right? Like that kind of stuff is pretty common knowledge. Like on Instagram and all these places, YouTube, if you watch something, they it's like one of the first thing in Japanese etiquette, so they talk about it. But it's very interesting. Like there's specific place that you can eat certain things in public, but not certain things. And so I have to check with my Japanese navigator on certain things, because the onigiri, the rice balls or sandwich, it's okay to you still can't walk and eat, but there's like certain places on the train station or like right outside of convenience store you could eat, but no banana. And I'm like, why? Right? Like to me, banana is my snack. That's the healthiest option. And I admit, in New York, people eat stuff on Subway. So I do eat banana on Subway or on a train station, right? And that is never a problem. However, when I was in Japan, I really had to like look around to make sure I am doing the correct thing, because often when you do certain things, then they take it as a disrespect, right? Disrespect to the train, disrespect to the place. So squatting down in front of a temple, especially actually sitting down on the ground, which is what we, New Yorkers often do too. That's also considered disrespect a lot of places in Japan. So, like often like we're just chatting and it's like, oh, I'm just a little tired, and we'll just like maybe sit down on a ground. And that is no in Japan. And often if you look in Japan, that people could be talking for a long time and they're still like pretty upright, which is because when at least I was growing up, and I think things are changing, but in the elementary school, they have you stand straight and listen to all the teachers and principals and all that outside for maybe like half an hour to an hour or something like that, even in like a really hot day. So Japanese are used to just, being polite and standing up straight. And that's what they expect from others. And when they don't, then they think it's disrespectful. So like things like that I noticed that, I need to kind of check in with someone in Japanese, but then when they explain, I understand because I come from that culture. And I felt like, especially, right, like there is over tourism problem in Japan. And it's not because there's so many people in Japan that is a problem. That's also a problem, but also that so many people who are coming does not understand the culture and do what they would do at home, and that's causing the problem. So I wanted to, but back then in 2019, I was like, oh, especially Reiki people, I don't want Reiki people to have bad names, right? So I'm like, I really wanted to be able to bridge the gap between the West and Japan. And what's interesting is that was my wish, and I put it on the side, right? I parked it, and I'm like, one of these days. And I think maybe like since 2007, because I'm Japanese and I teach Reiki, a lot of my students are like, when are you going to take me to Japan? Like, when are you going to have a tour? And I'm like, oh, it's a big production one day. And then during pandemic, I actually started to connect to Japanese people in Japan over Zoom. So what was interesting is, until then, my Japanese was not so great because I'll mix in all the English vocabulary. So I had a hard time talking to Japanese people. I mean, writing like 140 character or 140 words. Twitter post took me like 3 to 4 hours with Google Translate. Now they're ChatGPT, so much quicker. But because during pandemic, we had a lot more time. So I was able to actually practice my Japanese, and I started to teach in Japanese to my friends, And I was able to gain a lot of friends that now I go to Japan and I have all these friends in a lot of different cities. And I even have friends who are like monks and, so many different variety of friends. So then I felt like, oh, maybe I could do the tour that I always wanted to do. And then I heard about the over tourism problem. So I wanted to, I mean, part of me is like, I wanted to be able to have, I think one of my other thing that I've been thinking about is that I wanted to just have like educational things so that whoever is going, especially if they're Reiki practitioner, that they will be educated. They don't have to come to my tour. And I wanted to be able to do the tour because that's something I've been wanting to do for 17 years. And just as we're talking, this is like last year, a year before that. Wait. Yeah, I think it's the 2023, around spring. I didn't have much energy, right? Just with the autoimmune condition and everything. So I was starting to feel like a little, before I die, what do I want to do? And one of the things, and I have a very blessed life that I feel like I did everything that I wanted to do on this earth, except for this Reiki tour. So I'm like, well, I don't know how I'm going to do this tour if I don't have enough energy, but I really want to do that. So in 2023, I just went to Japan for a month, and I saw my new Japanese friends that I never met except for Zoom. And I went around the country, and then wherever I went, I'm like, oh, I want to share this with my Reiki people. Like I want to share with my Reiki students. So when I came back, I decided that I'm going to put a tour together. And that's how I ended up bringing the tour together last year. So that's where I met you, Colleen. I met you with my students.
What a great story. And as one of the people in Japan not understanding the etiquette, I can absolutely attest to both that I am there for respect, and I know that I cross many boundaries that would be considered disrespect. And at the Usui's memorial, that here in the United States, it's normal that you can walk through a cemetery, you can take pictures, you can sit on the ground and eat and have a picnic and things like that. And some of the ones in our area even have running and walking trails through them like a park. And so I didn't know the etiquette, and I definitely crossed boundaries and would have wanted to know them so that I was being respectful and perceived as respectful. And the one that you mentioning, eating and walking, I don't think I've done that just because it's like not what I'm doing anyway, but that isn't one that I knew. And I would know not to eat on the bus or the train. I don't think I knew it though. I just don't think I've done it. But so, yeah, that is, I think, probably a really big piece of it. And that's why here in the West, we think of Japanese people and the Japanese culture as so respectful and polite. And it's I I think you should write a book because because seriously, it's important, and we do want to. I'm thinking of even on Mount Karama and some of the places, like I wouldn't have known you don't just sit on the ground. I mean,
Yeah.
I do that up in the place where Yusui is, but other places in that I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that's like more specifically to like if you're on a street or something like that, right? Like we often just like sit down, and it's fine to sit in Mount Krama. There's like designated places where you could sit,
Yeah.
right? So those are fine, but there's the fine line between like, oh, but this is okay here. Like the train example. If you're on a bullet train, they have this amazing bento box you can eat, right? so you could eat on the bullet train, but you can't eat on the local train. And how about these train, right? Like there's all these like gray area. If you're Japanese, you would know. But if you're not, then it's like, how come? And yeah, and the sitting down and squatting down thing too. Often like I feel like in the West when we have a tour and the tour guide is speaking on the like maybe like we're like on the side of like the famous place, and then some of us after like a long day we are tired, so we just want to sit down and listen like on the street, right? And that could be considered disrespect in Japan. So there's this like all these like fine nuances and other things like so so maybe some of the listener may not know, but so Mount Krama is where Reiki started, right? And then there's the temple there, and I'm sure Colleen you saw it, and Robin, I'm sure you know about that too, that there's what they call star mandala in front of the temple, right? That's where like everyone go and like get the power. And so I took a picture in front of it, on top of it. So there's this triangle thing that's there. And supposedly where the triangle is where all the deity of Mount Krama is like underneath, and it's represented. So a lot of people, including the like Japanese people on Instagram, stand on top of it and make pose, and and then my temple is right behind it. So I did that in 2019, and then I got a very wise Japanese Reiki practitioners who sent me a private message letting me know, so you don't want to step on top of the deities, and you do not show your butt. You don't face your butt to temples and shrines. I'm like, right? Like, and I'm like looking at Instagram, I'm like, but even Japanese people, and then and they're really, I mean, those people who actually take time to let me know, I'm very grateful, because they're like, it seems like everyone's doing it, especially the foreigners do it, and because you're someone who is like the face of Reiki, or like who could be bridging the culture, that I want to let you know. And it wasn't just one person, two people actually let me know privately. So I was really grateful and also bummed, right? Like, oh, my very Instagrammable photo. So I do use a photo where I am not stepping on the triangle. And Colin, you know the triangle that I'm talking about.
I do. I have photos of my feet on the triangle, photos of me from behind, from this way, from that way on the triangle. No idea that that is what that's about.
Yeah, and I think, they are doing me a favor and letting me know like so maybe you can think of it like probably like I'm not so familiar with like Christian or Catholic churches, but there are certain things that everyone else does, but you may not supposed to do. Like there may be something like that. So I think it's like that. So I do have a picture of me facing my back towards the temple, but not stepping on the triangle, right? And then because that was such a great photo, right? And then now this time when I go to the tour, what I told everyone is, let's be fashionable, right? Like look sideways, because you could be in front. Like let's say here's a temple, you could be in front of the temple, you can take a picture. However, don't show your butt towards there, right? Like it looks sideways like a model, right? Like how those Instagram influencer who are like posing sideways, right? So that way your butt is facing this way and not facing the temple. So those like minute nuances that some of the things. So I ended up having someone who mentored me, who's really like, I would say like very Shintoism mentor, who really like, okay, so you can't take photo like this, but you can take photo like this. And like those very minute nuances where I went around with my friends who are really into visiting temples and shrines and who, who's well versed in it. And they're like, oh, it's okay. So, right, there is this like, okay, so where is the line? But it just, for someone like me who is here to educate people, it's really good for me to know that you don't want to face your butt this way, or you don't want to be taking picture of things that are sacred. And then you have to kind of draw a line like where that ends, right? Because I went to a photography school. I
Oh,
want
right.
to, and then also not. I'm sure, Colleen, you probably have the same thing. Not everyone can go to Japan, so we want to
Right.
document it and share with as many Reiki people as possible, right?
Absolutely.
So there's like all these things that I'm still like trying to figure out, like, where my line is, but at least like I have the knowledge of what's respected, what's disrespectful, and what's respect for regular Japanese people, and what's respect for a very devoted Japanese Shinto person.
Mhm.
So yeah, so this is like where it's a very deep dive into the cultural differences. And yeah, I'm just curious to find out from you, Colleen, like what are things that you notice that are very different?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's so much. Um, Probably the first thing is what a comfortable country it is to travel in.
Mhm.
It is very polite. It feels very safe. It's very comfortable. Um, Transportation is really easy. I am personally typically there for spirituality, so I do spend a lot of time in the spiritual locations, and most of the time on Mount Karama, because we actually teach on Mount Karama. Reiki Master. In fact, we have one coming up again this year where we'll be teaching on Mount Karama. And so I have been fortunate, Lena Takahashi, that she assists us, I think also to help us with the etiquette so
Mhm.
that we are not totally inappropriate everywhere we go, because I think we are. So, um, but I have never had anyone be rude to me about it or correct me about it, although probably they would have wanted to. And so, because I think of some of the different things that I didn't know that just, is normal here that isn't normal there. Spiritually, I was really fortunate this year to get to go to the fire ceremony on Mount Karama and got to stay with the family that we stay with when we're teaching on the mountain, and actually got to be a part of the ceremony. And it's so ancient and just so beautiful and mindful. The mindfulness, the thoughtfulness that goes into everything, and the hospitality, because I know hospitality is one of the, in the places that we stay, is one of the most important aspects for the people who are providing the hospitality for us. That is, they're so very focused on making sure that things are well done for us and easy for us. And um, on Mount Karama now, I'm not sure if you're aware that William Rand had the peace grids made that he placed around the world. And in 2022, Lena was able to take one of the peace grids to the priest on the mountain, and it is placed in their prayer room for peace. So it's not there for public view. And I thought it was interesting. Here's an East-West thing. My immediate thought was, well, they should place it in a place with public view so they make income from it. That people from Reiki people would, do donations and things like that. That's a very Western viewpoint. And then finding out that they actually placed it within their prayer room where they pray for peace and the most powerful location it could possibly be, and how that I don't think they even wavered or thought about that decision. And then we were able to have William Rand, myself, and Lena were able to have about an hour and a half meeting with the priest. And this was after the typhoon had done so much destruction. And it was so beautiful listening to how their prayers are connecting in with the spirits of the mountain, the spirits of Sonten, and how they are deciding what trees they will plant, which for anybody listening that didn't know, when the typhoon hit Mount Karama, it really did a lot of damage. That was in 2018. And so they are asking the mountain, what trees do you want planted here? What shrines need to be rebuilt, and where should they be rebuilt? And everything is done through listening to the mountain and the spirits of the mountain, and just this, tremendous honoring. The other one that is always so amazing to me is the first year, I think William, my husband, and I went to Japan together in the first year, and we were on Mount Karama, and the children's school is there. And the kids, I love hearing all the laughter of all the kids. It's one of the great parts as you're walking into the beginning of it. The kids are playing, and it's great children's laughter. But that koi pond where the waterfall is, they had the kids going down. Now these are toddler-sized kids, so these are maybe 2, maybe up to 4, but they were kind of 3. And those steps are big steps. And they had those kids going up and down those steps, going up and down those rocks all by themselves. And it was noticeable to me because one of the first things I would have done, like with my grandkids, I would have been holding their hand, making sure and the teachers are like, come on, hurry up, let's go. And the kids did it, and they were happy and had such a good time and so competent. And so that was another thing too, is just watching, the level of just how the kids are very skilled at, just doing the things kids do.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I love going there and seeing all the kids who are learning with their Buddhist teaching, right? Just
Yes.
there's something special about it. When I was there to do the sutra calligraphy, they just happened to bring those kids. And they actually did, I don't know how you call those things. Like on the paper, they have like they do like a play with the paper, and I don't know the English name for it, but like there's like all these different characters, and then they will just like put like one paper after another, and like one person will be the monk and the other person was the mouse. And so they're the kids, actually some of them are helping with the paper and some of them are like helping with the characters, and they presented that for us in between the calligraphy, sutra calligraphy, and then also the Buddhist talk. And I'm like, wow, these are such young kids. It was just like what you said, so competent, and also they're getting the philosophy, right? Like teaching of Buddhist teaching, and not just the philosophy, but also they're living it. And I'm like, wow, what a blessing that they have to be able to be exposed to that every day.
Well, one of the times at the top of the mountain that I was there, there was the whole group of kids. These were a little bit older, maybe third to fifth grade, somewhere in there, and they had them hugging the tree,
Oh,
and they were all holding hands around, the big tree. You know how big those trees are at the top, and all hugging the tree, and they were all barefoot. And so, just engaging with the nature of the mountain.
oh,
Yeah.
so nice. Wow. I would love to live there for a year and experience a season, right? And feel what it's like to be there with the nature. I,
Yeah, I've been there in the spring. Last year in 2023, we went during the cherry blossom season,
oh,
and
nice.
that was really beautiful. In
Yeah.
Kyoto, I was there during that time, and the Philosopher's Path. I don't know if you've
Oh,
walked
yes.
that,
Oh my
but
God.
during the cherry blossom season, it was just beautiful. And of
Wow.
course, along the river and all of the cherry blossoms and the mountain.
Wow.
This year, when we went, we were just at the beginning of the leaves changing
Hmm.
and turning to autumn. Always beautiful.
Yes. Yeah, I know they're a little slow this year with turning the leaves.
That's what I thought, because we were
Yeah.
there. The last day of our class was November 10th. They were
Oh,
just really kind of at that point starting to be like overall in the autumn colors. So I thought it was pretty late too.
yeah. I left the country November 15th and they're just turning in Tokyo. So I would think it would be probably same in Kyoto too. But I was hoping that I get to see, more red maple trees. But either way, it's beautiful. So, but I remember the first time I visited Mount Grama, what I loved about is what you said about the nature, how their teachings are with the nature. So the cable that you can hop on, right? And so Robin, they have this cable that you can go up to the temple, and the announcement will talk about how like breathe in the universal life force energy, and put your foot on the ground, and like they say so many what I think is woo-woo thing, right?
Mhm.
Like they make an announcement, and I'm like, oh, I know they said they have nothing to do with Reiki, but I really feel like whatever they're saying is really connected to what I learned as a Reiki practitioner. So that's why even though like they say there's don't have, and I even went to talk to I think when I went in 2007, I went to talk to a female monk at the office, and chat with her about like Reiki and like how it is related or not related, and we had all these talk about it, and she was really nice about it too. And that it doesn't have much to do with Master Usui, but I feel like the teaching is so close to what I feel like what Reiki teaching is. So every time I go there, I buy. They have a specific. I guess they're their own publisher. So they have books in Japanese that is like a Krama publishing, and they're not that light books, and then I wish they would do the digital version, but I just go over there and I normally buy a couple of them and then bring it home and then read it, and then next time I go, so I keep accumulating the collection of the books, and I feel like their teaching, I feel is like so in harmony with what I feel like what Master Usui has taught us. So that's why I love
Well,
that.
and it makes sense with him receiving the energy of Reiki and creating the system of Reiki through his experience, that would all be part of his perception um, and experience too.
Yeah. That's why I feel like, if you're a Reiki practitioner, I would invite everyone to, put it on high on the bucket list to go to Mount Krama. And if they are, I would like to share some of the tips and how I feel like how it's relevant, like how the Japanese culture is relevant to our Reiki practice. Could I share that with your listeners?
Yes.
So as we've been talking, Japanese culture is very different from at least American culture. That's the only thing that I can really compare to, because I've only lived in East Coast, outside of Japan. And the Japanese culture is, I think Colleen just mentioned it too, there's a mindfulness about it, right? There's a heavy emphasis on mindfulness and also respect. And I feel like for those of you who studied Reiki too, there's the symbol for the oneness. And so I feel like that oneness, being able to be in harmony with every being, right? Not just other human being, but the tree and anything that's on earth. That I feel like is the Japanese culture, because in Japan, that we grow up being told that every item is God, or like it has deities, right? So you want to respect every item. So like if I were, and we have like futon, which is on the floor, right? So sometimes I will like step on my pillow, then I'm taught to say, I'm sorry, right? Like I'm treating with a respect. And so everything, what's amazing in Japan is that you could actually ship a cake through like UPS, and you expect them to come perfectly. Last year there's this like big news about how like many of the cake came all shattered, and I'm like, of course. But apparently in Japan, you can ship a cake and everything will, come perfectly. That's what's expected, because everyone treat items with a respect. And so I'm also a KonMari consultant, which is a Japanese art of decluttering. And when I was working with KonMari consultant, and I'm more New Yorker than Japanese, right? So I was working with Japanese consultant, and I would just move box with my feet. Right? I think some of you might have done that. That's common here, right? So I was just move the box with the feet because it's heavy, and I was disciplined that no, you want to move with your hand with a respect, right? So that kind of like a minute difference in how to pay respect. It wasn't that I was being disrespectful by pushing it by foot. I was just being more, what's the word, efficient, because my foot or leg has more power than my hand, right? But Japanese would think of that as disrespect. So there's many things like that, where in order to live in harmony, people give up their individuality. So there's good and, I don't know if I should say good and bad, but there's pros and cons. So I love living in New York because of the individuality, right? Like I get to be me, and it's amazing to be in Japan as a tourist, or being there. I think this time I was there for 6 weeks and I love being there. However, if you're living there, it's a little bit different story. You want to, kind of let go of your individuality and be in harmony. You want to like check what other people are doing and make sure you don't, what do you call that? You don't do the feathers. I forgot that saying.
Ruffle feathers.
Thank you. You don't ruffle the feathers. Yes. So there's the pros and cons about it. And if any of you are visiting Japan, those of you who's listening, you may want to find out about, what ruffle the feathers, and, how you can be in harmony. Because I don't know, Colleen, I think it sounds like you have a place where you're staying where they will take care of you with food and everything at one place. So it's probably fine. But I took my people to different cities. And, New York, among many other part of the US, we are the one that customize our food the most. I think I travel to many places, and whenever I'm eating with my New Yorker girls, it's like, hey, so can you put this and take this out, and can you substitute this? And everyone's like, oh sure, yeah, and no problem, right? And there's time when I was only eating macrobiotic food, I was vegan, and so I'm very specialized and customized too, and that's what I'm used to. And in Japan, most of the time, everyone, yeah, Colleen knows, right? Everyone eat the same thing, and that, if you're giving something, then you want to finish them. So that's what we're taught when we're growing up, that do not leave even a single grain of rice on a plate, because that's a disrespect to a farmer. And here I am, right? More New Yorker than Japanese. I noticed that when I was in Japan in 2023, and I'll have this amazing Japanese morning buffet. And I'm like, oh, what's this? What's that? What's that? I'll pile things up. And then, I'll try a little bit. And if I like it, I'll keep eating. If not, then I want to make sure I have more room for my stomach. So I'll have some pile of stuff that I did not finish. And then I look around and I'm like, oh, Japanese people clear up their plate. And I remembered that I wasn't supposed to leave food on a table. If I grab them, then I'm supposed to, finish them. So, I learned to finish, and I also learned to grab as much as I can eat. However, it's, that's what I love about America, is that I can eat this, but I can't eat this. Right? Like, so I need to leave this, or I don't even have to explain, right? Like, oh, I'm someone who doesn't eat fish or whatever. And then I'll just like put it on the side and no one will question you. That's your choice. In Japan, I think things are changing. But when I was at elementary school, they will have school lunches. And you're not allowed to leave anything. You need to finish everything that's on the plate. And things still run like that. So when you're in Japan, so I had to teach my students, so when you're in Japan, most likely you won't be able to customize, and we only order what you can eat, and also they don't do doggy bag, right? So there's like all these like 3 layers of things, and they think it's a disrespect. And I think just a couple of days ago, I was talking to my friend about this, that she was hosting her relative for the new year. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm on my diet, but we're all ordering sushi. And I'm like, oh, sushi is healthy. And she's like, yeah, but the rice part, right? I'm trying not to eat that much carbohydrate. And I'm like, why don't you just eat the top part? And she's like, oh, I can't do that. That's a disrespect, right? So those are the kind of like little minute things that you want to kind of check and see. And then also when you ask for, I had someone who's vegan on my tour. So we had to look for some place that we can eat that will honor vegan food. And it was very interesting. I had a Japanese friend who was helping me. And I was wondering, like, why she wouldn't just like call them up and be like, hey, so we have a vegan, so can you accommodate us? Like, that's not how she was going around. And she was having, problem, but she found a few restaurants. And then I'm like, oh, let me just do some more research too. So I kind of just went how I would do in New York and be like, so we have someone who's vegan, and I haven't even got to like who can't eat pork or spinach or tomato. But once we get to the vegan part, or I just said vegetarian because I wasn't sure if they get the vegan part. And then I'm like, so I'm looking at your menu, and I think this is vegetarian. It's just tomato, and then there's this and there's that. So vegetarian should be okay, right? And they're like, like, how I mentioned Japanese don't say no, right? So I'm supposed to read that they're not welcoming me, and then, but I didn't get it, so I keep going like, but this one's okay, right? And then after a while, the restaurant person went, so what day and how many people? And I said like a date a month ahead. And I know I saw online reservation system that it was wide open. But he's like, oh yeah, that day for 5 people. Sorry, it's all taken. I'm like, oh, this is what my friends has been dealing with, right? The just like accommodating things that in this country, especially in New York, is normal, is not easy in Japan, and there's more vegan places or vegan friendly places. So, we were able to eat well. Actually, my vegan person who I was a little bit worried, like I wanted to make sure she was able to eat well while she's traveling, because I'm not vegan anymore, but there was a time when I was, and that is always a big struggle for me, and I didn't want her to have that. So with all the research, she was actually happy that she felt like she ate better than when she was at home. So I was like, sure. But that required a lot of pre-planning and communication, and then also learning experience for me that not everyone's willing to accommodate. So I really need to do the research ahead of the time, and then I also need to come with a partnership that not like, hey, can you do this and do that? Like, how we kind of do it in New York, that I need to be very cordial and, almost like asking for a favor to be able to accommodate certain things. So if you are someone so those of you who's listening, who there are particular things that you cannot eat and that needs to be accommodated, highly recommend that you do research ahead of the time. There are places that will do that. However, if you're vegan, you want to download apps for vegan. And then also, if you're someone who can't eat pork, most likely a lot of places, if it's a regular ramen shop, the broth is based in pork. So, you want to do all that research. And going back to, I highly recommend wearing kimono in Japan if you're a Reiki practitioner, because that's what Master Usui wore during that time. And have you ever tried wearing kimono, Colleen?
I have not.
It's not the easiest thing to wear, right? You have to have someone, you can't just so in the States, when we say kimono, it's just like those shaped thing that you may just put belt around. The actual kimono, you have to hire someone to put it on for you. And then also, it's pretty tight around your waist, and then you can't, it's pretty tight. So you kind of have to walk in smaller steps. However, that help you to be more mindful. You walk and move more mindfully. So I really loved taking my girls with kimono, and also we're like the superstars, right? Like there's 6 of us wearing kimono, and most of them don't look Japanese. So there's a lot of people who are trying to take picture.
Yes.
Aside from feeling the superstar part, the feeling the respect of the culture and the mindfulness of wearing something that Master Usui was wearing was very interesting experience for me. I've worn kimono growing up, and but I never really thought of it as, oh yeah, this is what he used to wear, or people in his era used to wear. It's really, it really takes an effort to move around. So I really love that experience. Otherwise it's like, oh, I can't move around so easily. But like thinking that, oh yeah, this is what he used to wear. So that was a really interesting experience too. And
Michelle, yeah, well, you just have so many different things that you do. So I kind of wanted to shift into a few of the other ones, unless there's something else that you wanted to share about that particular piece of what you were talking about. But there's like a whole list. Like, I want to know.
So maybe
Yeah,
could I just share one more thing on the tips on going to Japan?
Yeah.
Yes.
And yes, there's a whole, yes, I could probably write a book about it, because it's the people who came with me. I did like a Zoom education. I think I did that 5 times before we went, so that they can, they can learn the culture. So one of the most important thing is being on time, and their on time is 10 minutes, right? Colleen.
Oh yeah.
And it's not on time. Like if it's 6 o'clock, then you want to be there 5:50 or earlier. And so that's the part. If you're late, then that's a disrespect. And I learned it hard way by missing a train. So I was thinking like, oh, I can just get there. And I thought it was like an e-ticket, but I actually had to get like a physical ticket printed. And there was like some problem. And because I didn't leave enough time, that I was supposed to meet up with my friend on a train. We bought a reserved seating. And then I had to say goodbye to that train. And the next train that was coming was half an hour later. That was a complete sold out. And another one that was coming was an hour later. So I had to make my friend wait for 1 hour. So thank God that was not during the tour. I learned my lesson. So I was super duper early every time. But yeah, things work a little bit different in Japan. And my friend was saying that when she's gathering with her relatives, she's thinking, I'll just get there 15 minutes early. Well, they start calling you 20 minutes before the appointed time, going, where are you? So, yes. So, something to keep in mind. And yeah, the rules and respect are very important in Japan. So, there are things in this country where like, oh, that's fine, right? Like you can just change things around, where here it's much easy going. So accommodating things is not a big deal, but trying to do that in Japan sometimes they get yelled at by their boss. So if you're asking for some exception, just remember that they may be doing a bigger favor than what you're used to. So anyway, I have so
I'll just
much.
add real quickly before we
Yeah.
go on, because of the food part being very gluten-free, and everything in Japan has soy sauce, which has gluten. And so that has been, to be really honest, and for anybody who doesn't know, the 7-Elevens and the Family Marts there have food. And so I use my Google Translate on my phone to take a picture of the ingredients. And I am standing in those stores forever, going through each one. Which rice ball does not have soy sauce in it? And I've learned my way around it. But and there are gluten-free restaurants for sure. There are dedicated, but the rest of them, they have no idea what I'm even talking about. Like it's not a thing there. But when we're on Mount Karama, the host and hostess there do accommodate me. And they were actually, at first they were like the same thing the way you describe. Like, no, that's not how that works here. But now they've said they're actually glad to know about this, how this works in other countries, that there are the specialized foods like that. Because it's like you say, it's just not how it works there. So yeah, I do a lot of my food there. I do a lot of not when I'm on Mount Karaman in the classes, but when I'm in the cities. I do a lot of 7-Eleven. So
And they're the best.
yes.
Right? They have so much great food. I could live there.
Yeah, it's so different because 7-Eleven here is just like chips and nuts and things like that. But there, that's actually the kind of fast food, the way you eat fast food there.
Yes, yes, totally. Yeah.
Anyway, Robin, go ahead and ask what you want to ask because we could talk
Well,
forever.
I just I know that we have, you have such a resume. And so a lot of the different things that you integrate Reiki into, I think you had already mentioned, is it KonMari or KonMari?
Um, yeah, either way is fine.
Okay. Yeah. About that one, because so many, I know, when the Netflix show came out, it was a sensation. But the fact that you are a Reiki practitioner and how you integrate Reiki into it, but then also the fact that you again are this bridge between the two cultures around this method as well. So I'm just interested in how you came into that and how you integrate Reiki into it, and then we'll see what comes up from there.
Just before you start though, so what you are saying, is that the same thing as what we think of as Marie Kondo?
Yes, Marie Kondo. Yes.
Oh, okay. Now I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah, so the Marie Kondo is the person who started this movement or this method called KonMari method. and it's the Art of Japanese Decluttering. And thank you for asking that, because not everyone knows, right? The Netflix show really helped. I think it's over 190 countries that the show aired. So a lot of people know, but not everyone knows about it. So it's the Art of Japanese Decluttering that's based on choosing things that spark joy. So it's not decluttering based on throwing things that you don't need, right? So what I love about it is that you get to stay in the positive. And it's all really, experiential. So yes, your home will be tidied, but what happens at the end is that your life is transformed, just like Reiki class. Because you spend time deciphering things based on what sparks joy for you, you actually tune into yourself to see what sparks joy for you in this moment. So seeing like who you truly are, which I feel is like what Reiki does too, right? With your self-care and, doing meditation and really tune into yourself, that you discover who you are with Reiki. And KonMari method is just another way of discovering yourself. So there's a lot of synergy. And it's funny, like I said, I kind of put Japanese side of me on the side, right? And I wasn't even speaking that much Japanese, and somehow Reiki come to my life, and I'm like, oh, Reiki, and then I got into it, and I'm like, for me, it's like, okay, that's the only part that I keep with Japan, and then everything else, I read Japanese comic book, but aside from that, I'm like, oh, Japan, I go there maybe every 6 years or whenever, and then I came across KonMari method in 2017. So people think just because I'm a certified KonMari consultant that I am a tidied person, and I'm the opposite. Before, when I started, my home was a huge mess. I love so many things. I have passion for life and stuff, right? So I'm like, oh, I love this, and then I like to just pile them up, and maybe sometimes I'll have an avalanche. So that's how I used to live. But I'm like, and I felt like I could never move. So at that time, I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment, but it's 1,000 square 1-bedroom apartment, right? And walk-in closet. I think I had 4 other closets filled with stuff, and I teach Reiki out of my home office too. So when my students or clients are coming, I had to like shove everything into my bedroom and create a serenity in the session room. And so
don't open the door.
Right. Yeah, it's like, welcome. And right, like I just put everything away. So I mentioned to one of my Japanese friends, like, oh, I think I'm just gonna clean up my kitchen because I have so much stuff. And she's like, oh, I can help you. So at that time, she kind of did something similar to KonMari method. So what's specific about KonMari method is that you take everything out of that category. You don't leave stuff in there and just be like, oh, do I want this? But you take everything out. So if it's clothing, every single item of your clothing will come out and get piled up. So if you watch Netflix, like, some people have a huge mountain. I have pretty huge mountain too. And the reason being that if you don't pile everything, it could be like scattered everywhere and you never know how much you own. So I had 12 scissors. It was scattered around so many places, right? So like maybe 3 in this room, 3 in the kitchen. But I didn't know I had that many until I went around and gathered them together.
I'm laughing because I can guarantee you Colleen has a lot more than that. In fact, I just borrowed a basket of things from her for crafts, and there's 2 pairs of scissors in that one. And that was just a random
like, where are my scissors?
random basket in a random closet that I was like, oh, there's a perfect thing for crafts in that I grabbed, and there's 2 pairs of scissors in it. That's hilarious.
Saying like 12 pairs of scissors. I'm like, everybody doesn't have 12 pairs.
Well, we have a lot more things in common then.
We
Yeah.
really do.
It's that Pisces.
Right. It's the Pisces.
The
And-
creativity. You have the creativity. There's different
Right.
scissors for different things.
Exactly.
These happen to be her sewing scissors. And I told my daughter, I was like, don't touch the sewing scissors. It is an offense.
Like, oh my God, you took my sewing scissors.
It was an accident. I did not mean to. I have kept them in care. I did not let Luna touch them. I understand how good the sewing scissors are. I honor them and I will return them, I promise. It
There's
was
the
an accident.
respect.
It was an
There's a
accident.
respect.
Right. There's a respect. I was just thinking that.
Yes.
So anyway, you pile them up and then you go through each single item and figure out what spark joy for you, right? And then you keep them on that spark joy for you, and then you say goodbye with a respect and appreciation with the item that does not spark joy for you. So that way, it's not like, it's like when you're focused on like, oh, I'm stupid. Why did I buy this? I didn't wear this for 5 years. Oh, I'm too fat. You're more focused on the negative. And I think that's what I was doing all my life. I tried to tidy my place many, many times. And, before 2017, and I failed because I could not deal with so much negativity and stupidity of me, right? Like, why did I do this? So, so the first day we did the kitchen, and with KonMari method, we actually go through different categories. So we go through the clothing first, and then we go through books, and we go paper, and then we go through everything else that's called komono, and then we do sentimental, because that's kind of like building the muscle. So we start with something easy to hard one. And that day we just did the kitchen. And when we're done, so at that time we weren't doing the true KonMari method, but when we're done, my friend told me, so there's this woman called KonMari and she does it this way. And I'm like, okay, and this is before Netflix day. So I just went and watched the YouTube that she had out in English and Japanese, like everything that was out there. I got hooked. I'm like, oh my God. And then I bought like books in Japanese and English and I read them both. And I'm like, I really love this. I so resonate. So I was able to actually go through every single item with that category. And I said goodbye to about 500 outfits. And I know, and I live
That
in New
makes
York
me
City.
feel better.
Yeah. Yes, I for someone who live in the New York City apartment, I have a lot of stuff. And but what was funny is when so that friend ended up helping me throughout, and so she came over and saw my stuff that I was saying goodbye to. And I had them all in the foyer in a different category, right? Like skirts and tops and all that stuff. And she saw all that pile and she's like, do you have any clothes left? And I'm like, oh, come here. I have them in the bedroom. And so I said goodbye to about 500 outfit, but I still had 500 outfit left for me to keep, right? So I had this pile in the bedroom of 500 outfits. And she's like, did you say goodbye to any? And I'm like, you just saw them in the foyer. So anyway, what I kept is everything that sparked joy for me. And what's amazing about this method is really you get to see who you are and then also what sparks joy. So then, because especially if you want so many things, you might have done that like, I don't know, 20 million times, right? Does it spark joy? Does it not spark joy? And so you made the decision so many times that when you're picking dinner menu, or when you're picking a vacation, or when you're just deciding if you want to go to the right or left, that you're coming from what sparks joy for you, rather than what you should do, or rather than like what you are used to just doing on daily routine. So then your life will be filled with more spark joy choices. And a lot of my clients end up changing career, or maybe sometimes even home, or maybe, relationships, or, they get to see who they are and what spark joy for them. So in that, I see so many things that are similar to Reiki, the outcome of the life transformation coming from different way. And then also a lot of my Reiki students, end up doing the KonMari session with me. And, thank God for pandemic that we can do this online too. So now I work with people around the world, and people ask
You're
like,
sparking joy right now.
yeah, it's just what's so great about it is that people are like, how can you do this online? And I'm like, very easily, because with Zoom, you can see things, right? And then I'll be working with my clients and they're like, okay, I got everything out from the closet. And I'm like, what's that thing? I see a box in the closet. And they don't see it because that's their, like that's part of the scenery, right? But I can actually see what's there. And often those are things that they really tuned out. It's either something that they just carried from like boxes from like 3 moves ago that they deleted from their memory so they don't even see them. And then when they open up, often there are things in there that they don't want to face, right? So Reiki comes in handy too, because I can, so I normally focus on the KonMari part, but also if my clients are having some, emotional challenges, right? Like going through your sentimental item is really hard. Things that that one day maybe you want to say goodbye, but you haven't because there's so much attachment. So with that kind of stuff, I'm able to help them with Reiki. And then also, spiritual counseling and relationship coaching and all that other things that I do come in handy because it's a whole life project. And what I love is that the feeling the first time I did that I got, and I still get it too, like sometimes I redo things, is that like the closet that used to have an avalanche, that it sparks so much joy that I would just go to the closet and open up to look for no reason, just because it's like so sparkling inside. And that's what I would say 90% of the time. That's what my client says. It's like, I will get the message from them saying like, I just went to look at the closet. I can't stop looking at it because it just sparks so much joy for no reason. I don't need anything. And it just, there is something about it that it's like, and I'm the guide, right? So there's a professional organizer who come and organize for you. And KonMari method consultant are someone who guide you into creating magic in your life. So you're in charge. You're the one that made the decision. And I feel like, good metaphor analogy is the little prince. Do you guys know the little prince? There's the rose, right? That the little prince cared for so many, like, and she was very high maintenance. And when little prince came on Earth, then he discovered that there's so many more roses, but somehow that one is very special. And I think it was a fox that says like, it's all the, I forgot the exact word, but it's all the time and care and love that you spend with her, that particular rose from your planet, that made her special rose. And I feel like with items too at home, that you're the one, right? It's not me coming over and be like, okay, keep this one and make it look pretty. No, I guide you into creating something special. You took time and decided if it sparked joy for you or not. And then you claimed and said, okay, you're with me. And I guide you in finding a permanent location for each item that spark joy for you. So then there's this energy that just sparks in there that brings out amazing thing of that particular item. So I think what I mentioned about before about Japanese philosophy of thinking that every item has deities, right? Like the respect for every item. I think this also is true in that case too, where because you have a respect for item as a deity, that you have a different relationship from just kick it on the side with your feet, right? You would be pushing it. Sorry, I still kick sometimes my boxes and push it over, but I do less of that. And so that's and then the other thing that I love about KonMari method is that we greet home. So either virtually or in person, when I start to work with a client, and the first, actually, there's the category of things to work with, but the real first thing is coming up with a vision. Coming up with a vision with your ideal lifestyle, and coming up with a vision with your ideal home, right? That's the carrot that when you're like, I don't want to deal with any more stuff, then you remember your vision, and then you can keep going. So you come up with a vision and you greet your home. So you treat your home like your partner, and you greet your home for all the years. And I highly recommend, whether you do the KonMari method decluttering or not, that as a Reiki practitioner, I think you find this fascinating and rewarding to just, go greet your home and thank for all the years, or how many ever you've been there, how you've been supported, and how, you've been protected. And that if there's anything that you're up for, that you can ask for support. And often what happens is, so there's the coming up with a vision, and then you do greeting, and then you do all the categories, and at the end you find the permanent location for each items, right? So because if you have a location that's dedicated for those items, then you don't have to use a brain. That's what was missing for me too, that now it doesn't take me too long to put things away, because I can do it mindlessly. It's like, oh, this goes da, 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 da. And but when you're figuring where things needs to go, then of course I help with asking the right question and guide as well too, but also the home. Sometimes your home can guide you too. So sometimes you get the message from your home saying, oh, you can put it over here. And so you can have your home as a support. And it's I'm sure for many of us, home is a sacred sanctuary. So being able to be a partner with your home, and the home that get your back, I guess that's how you say it.
Yeah.
Has your back.
Yeah.
Has your back. Yes, thank you. And then also for someone with autoimmune condition, I did notice that I was so grateful that I did KonMari method before I was diagnosed with the condition. It doesn't have to be autoimmune condition, but anyone with some health challenges, when your home is a clutter, it takes your energy out, right? Especially as women, we can scan through so many things, right? Often masculine brain tends to be single focused, so they can just focus on what they're working on. But feminine brain, we see everything. So we walk in home, and if we're sick or tired, and it's like, oh, didn't do that, oh, that's a mess. And that's like all these incompletions around home will take our energy away. And especially if you're, if you don't have much energy and you're just laying down on bed, what you focus on could be those incompletion that you did not do. Like, oh God, I need to do this and do that, and could take time away. Whereas that if your home has been gone through with the KonMari method, just like what I said about the closet, right? Like you look around and it's like, every corner of my room sparks joy, and it will give you energy. So I highly, highly recommend it for, people who has some sort of chronic condition. so that take time to do them. And I've worked with people with chronic condition, and actually, in the beginning, they're not sure, like, oh, am I going to have enough energy to do this? I tried tiding and it took so much energy out of me. But because we focus on what sparks joy instead of what you did wrong, right, that it actually gives them more energy. And what's interesting is I think it's our cultural conditioning that, and that's why I'm here for, is I'm there as a coach, because we keep saying like, okay, does it spark joy? But then it seems like, and including me, but also a lot of my clients' brain default back to, do I need this? Why am I so stupid to buy this? Oh, this was expensive, right? The question keep like going back to the default way and switched from, does it spark joy? So then, I'll keep shifting back to, does it spark joy? Does it spark joy? And if you're focused on the positive, then there's much more energy. So what I noticed when I did the KonMari method is, in the past, when I tried to declutter, I was just like, oh, I was like, oh my God, I hate doing this thing. Right? I may spend like a whole weekend very dedicated. And then when I'm done, I was so exhausted. And by next weekend, it's like a whole mess again. But with the KonMari method, it does take a longer time because you need to touch every item. But when I was done, like every time I was done, and then that's true for my clients too, when they're done with that session, they're like, when can we do next? Because we're so energized with the energy. And sometimes, it's great to have awareness of energy too, like, learning how to be able to maneuver around the energy, because there may be some, let's say, clothing or items that it spark joy for you, but it has some energy around it. So one of my Reiki students / KonMari clients had these clothes that it sparked joy for her. But then she said that when I was wearing them, someone said something mean to me. So I have that memory. And I really want to keep this, but that keep coming up. So I don't wear them, although it sparked joy. So she was conflicted. So we worked together, and we just released that energy from herself, and then also from her clothing. And then she was able to wear that, and she was all happy about it. So there's like so many ways that Reiki can be used, and also like cleansing the space with Reiki energy, right? So after you physically move things and move things around, that it's really good to cleanse the energy of your home, as well as doing the self-care for yourself and really sitting down, rejuvenating yourself and giving yourself more energy. And then also really be in touch with yourself and finding out who you are. So I really am grateful that I have this Reiki skill when I learned KonMari, because I can put them 2 and 2 together, and it's interesting how they're both from Japan.
That's amazing. I love that.
Oh, me too. And the way you're describing it, seriously, like I look at my closet and it's instead of joy with it, it has all the, oh, I need to clean it, I need to get rid of stuff, I should, I haven't done yet. Like you say, the things that I've never worn still even have tags on them, things like that, oh God, I can't believe I didn't return that on time. All the shoulds and the negativity, and the way you describe it is, we just did a podcast with Marie Diamond, who is a feng shui really expert in the world, and her book is called Your Home is a Vision Board. And so many of the things that you're talking about make sense, even with what she was saying and talking about the decluttering. So all week, because we did that last week, and all week I'm like, oh God, boy, do I have the shits. Like looking even from where I'm sitting, oh, I need to get rid of all of that. And a really different perception than how you're describing it.
Yeah, I think that's what makes the difference. it's the journey that is
Yeah.
pleasant, right? The smelling the rose as you're going up on the mountain, as opposed to like, get there, get there, get there kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, how do people work with you? Go ahead and talk about that. Like, how would somebody that wanted to work with you with the KonMari method, how does that work?
Sure. So I do in person or virtual. So I do travel. I actually have traveled to Okinawa, Japan for a client too. So if you are like, I want you in person, I do travel too. However, I can do virtual too, as I mentioned. So if you go to my website, so I have the Reiki website and KonMari website, which will be in show notes, both of them. If you go to my KonMari website, there is a way to contact me, and I do a half an hour complimentary call where I can find out what you're struggling with, and then I can share with you how I can help you. And then from there, we go into either virtual or in-person session. And just like what I said, when we do that, then we'll be doing the vision, and then also the different categories and finding the permanent location. So if you're doing it virtual, what's great is you're touching every single item, right? And also, I don't need to have anything hidden from me. I've seen it, I've been there, right? But if you're like, oh, I don't want Michelle to see this section of the house, although the first session, I do warn you, is a house tour. So but if there is like a particular drawer or anything that's private, and I never, ever, ever tell you to throw anything away. And if there's like a particular place that you don't want to show me, I'll respect your privacy. But normally we go through a home tour and take picture of before picture. So that way you can, all my clients are so happy we did the before picture because they can brag about it in the after picture. And then also often, you get so used to the after that you forget about that. So anyway, so if you want to work with me in person too, same thing, chat with me, and then I can do also combination too. So I could do some virtual and some in person too. We could start out virtual and then we could do in person, or we could start out in person and do virtual. And we go from there.
And how about your Japan tours? When are you doing that again?
So I am actually putting interest list. Most likely it will be in October, but I haven't picked the specific date yet. Actually, I have a interest, what do you call that? Email sign me up list. So I should send you that too.
Wait list.
Yes, wait list. Yeah. So if you are interested in coming to Japan with me this year, most likely this fall, I will have that link in the show note too. And if you just send me your email address, then you'll be the first to know. It's a very small group because I want to give individual attention, and then also it's a bit of a different experience when it's a larger group in Japan. So I feel like last time, I'm not sure if I made public announcement. I might have just contacted everyone who already sent me a list for, private message me or put a sign up for the list, and then I contacted them, and then we went with that. So if you're interested, you're not married to it, but if you're curious about it, please do sign up, and then once I get more detail, I'll be in touch with you.
And your email is michelle@purplefishreiki.com or
Actually,
purplefishhealing.com.
very close. I think you actually get me psychically because it's Reiki at purplefishhealing.com.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So I think you had all the pieces in there.
Yeah.
And maybe I should send you that one too. So that way you have.
And do you also do Reiki sessions and virtually and things too? So
Yes.
can people find the same information about Reiki and sessions and classes and things like that on your website?
Yes, if you go to purplefishhealing.com, you find information about my classes. So right now I'm doing hybrid where you could do it in person or virtual. And also, just like I said, I'm going to be doing special class for veterinary clinic. So if there's a group of people who want to learn Reiki together, I can make something custom for you if you like it virtual or in person. And same thing with Reiki session. I do both in person in Queens, Jackson Heights, or sometimes I travel too if that is what you need. And then also, of course, I do the virtual session as well too.
Wow. Well, I feel like we always say this, but gosh, we could just keep talking for hours. So we haven't even touched on some of the other things with the resume, but we'll go ahead and we'll just have to have you back and
Sounds
go
good.
over the other things that you do. And what a great conversation, Michelle. Thank you so much. I am so inspired. And and also I feel like I've really gained a lot of information about the etiquette in Japan and an appreciation for Lena, who guides us and is always trying to help us stay within the etiquette. It's a little bit like herding cats.
Yes.
So she's always trying to manage it for us.
Yes, definitely. It's so great to have someone like Lena leading
Oh,
you guys.
such a huge, yeah. So I'm so appreciative, and I really mean it that you should consider writing a book about it.
Yes. Let me,
It's, as we always say, it's on the list.
yes.
It's on the list.
Yeah, I think I'm more of a talker than writing a book person. So I may just do like a Zoom thing or something like that.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yes, but thank you for encouraging me. That's good to know.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's really important to, especially so many more people are, like you say, traveling and tourism in Japan has really grown.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun talking with
Oh, thank you. You too. Oh my gosh. Robin, anything you want to finish up with?
Yeah, I think same. Michelle, it was wonderful having you. And thank you, of course, to all of the listeners. We'll have all of the information in the description and the show notes. And as Colleen said, we'll have to have you back, Michelle.
Sounds awesome.
All
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much. And as always, we're at ReikiLifestyle.com.
Thank you, everyone. Bye
Thank
now.
you. Bye.